History. Oxford is a unique and historic institution. As the oldest university in the English-speaking world, it can lay claim to 9 centuries of continuous existence. There is no clear date of foundation, but teaching existed at Oxford in some form in 1096. Oxford developed rapidly from 1167, when Henry II banned English students from attending the University of Paris following a quarrel with Thomas Becket. In 1188, the historian Gerald of Wales gave a public reading to the assembled Oxford dons, university lecturers, especially at Oxford or Cambridge. As a royal clerk to the king and 2 archbishops, Gerald of Wales travelled widely and wrote extensively. In around 1190, the arrival of Emo of Friesland, the first known overseas student, set in motion the university's tradition of developing international scholarly links. By 1201, the university was headed by a Magister Scholarum, head of an ecclesiastical school, Oxoni, on whom the title of Chancellor was later conferred in 1214, and in 1231 the masters were recognized as a universitas or corporation. During the 13th century, rioting between town and gown, townspeople and students, hastened the establishment of primitive halls of residence. These were succeeded by the first of Oxford's colleges, which began as endowed houses or medieval halls of residence, under the supervision of a master. Established between 1249 and 1264, University, Balliol and Merton colleges are the oldest. Less than a century later, Oxford had achieved eminence above every other seat of learning, and won the praises of popes, kings and sages by virtue of its antiquity, curriculum, doctrine and privileges. In 1355, Edward III paid tribute to the university for its invaluable contribution to learning. He also commented on the services rendered to the state by distinguished Oxford graduates. Early on, Oxford became a centre for lively controversy with scholars involved in religious and political disputes. John Wycliffe, a 14th-century master of Balliol, campaigned for a Bible in English, against the wishes of the papacy. In the 16th century, Henry VIII forced the university to accept his divorce from Catherine of Aragon, and the Anglican churchmen Cranmer, Latimer and Ridley were later tried for heresy and burnt at the stake in the city. From 1833 onwards, the Oxford movement sought to revitalize the Catholic aspects of the Anglican Church. One of its leaders, John Henry Newman, became a Roman Catholic in 1845 and was later made a cardinal. In 2019 he was canonized as a saint. From 1878 academic halls were established for women, who were admitted as full members of the university from 1920. By 1986, all of Oxford's male colleges had changed their statutes to admit women and, since 2008, all colleges have admitted men and women. During the 20th and early 21st centuries, Oxford established major new research capacities in the natural and applied sciences, including medicine. In so doing, it has enhanced and strengthened its traditional role as an international focus for learning and a forum for intellectual debate. Oxford University has been at the center of the COVID-19 response from the very onset of the crisis, remaining at the forefront of global efforts to combat the disease and to mitigate its many effects, such as developing a vaccine and identifying treatments. By early 2022, more than 2.6 billion doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine had been supplied to over 180 countries, with approximately 2/3 going to low and middle-income countries. The vaccine is estimated to have helped prevent 50 million COVID-19 cases, 5 million hospitalizations, and saved more than 1 million lives. Gifted men and women have studied or taught at the university throughout its history. Among them are 28 British Prime Ministers, at least 30 international leaders, 55 Nobel Prize winners, and 120 Olympic medal winners. Visitors to Oxford often ask where the university is. This is not always an easy question to answer. Some parts of it are landmarks, while others seem to be hiding in plain sight. In the heart of the city is the Sheldonian Theatre, where students are officially enrolled and take their final degrees. It was at the University Church of St. Mary the Virgin nearby that the bells were rung to call students to arms during the murderous city riots of the 14th century. The townsmen did the same for their side at Carfax, where now only the bell tower remains. Oxford, and its university, have witnessed plague, the violent destruction of centuries-old abbeys and monasteries by the Crown, the public execution of bishops by fire, the cannonballs of civil war, and, much more recently, the creation of the modern motor industry, which changed both the city and the world forever. Today, as the Minis roll out from Cowley to new owners around the globe, the university too has modernized its practices and outlook. In the 8th century the first abbey was built in Oxford, that of St. Fridswide. So began a long tradition of religious scholarship in the city, and St. Fridswide, whose name means bond of peace, is still Oxford's patron saint. Pottery, weaving and tanning were the original trades of early Oxford. As the scholars gathered, however, so did landlords, stonemasons, papermakers, bookbinders, scribes, printers, tailors and shoemakers. In the 12th century Henry II and his court regularly came to his palace at Beaumont, just outside the city wall. The court needed scholars trained in law to cope with the complexities of administration. Unable to travel to Paris while relations between England and France were strained, more scholars began to join them in Oxford. Education was often confined to the 7 liberal arts. 3 of them taught together, logic, rhetoric and grammar, were known as the trivium. 17th century Oxford was home to scholars such as physicist Robert Hooke and Christopher Wren, who was a professor of astronomy when he built the Sheldonian Theatre. In the 1800s reforms brought in the teaching of the natural sciences, and bursaries for those who could not otherwise have afforded to study. University fellows were first allowed to marry in 1877, prompting the building of large family houses in North Oxford. In 1878 Oxford University Extension delivered a series of lectures around the country, a movement which was to found the Department for Continuing Education. The first female students arrived to form women's colleges in 1879. In the 1930s Oxford's numbers were added to by an influx of Jewish intellectuals escaping the Nazis. In 1945 state funding through the University Grants Committee gave students access to degree courses regardless of their financial status. There are now 38 colleges in the university, all open to men and women. While each college has its own rules and regulations, they are all part of the university as a wider whole. In recent years the student body has become much more international. Today the university hosts students from 140 different countries, with China and the USA the most popular sources after the UK. Interactions between the university and the community are now more diverse and complicated than ever. Instead of murderous riots, students are involved in volunteering initiatives and support. Academic disciplines reflect much more of the problems of our modern world, and a commitment to make that knowledge available to all. In addition to their academic studies, students today are involved in a range of volunteering initiatives and support.